hard to believe for us, but this is our season 3 finale.
Season 3 finale.
Season 3. It's hard to believe. But here we are. So welcome. Mike and I decided to do an episode of our favorite found footage film as our finale, based on the fact that I seem to have chosen a few found footage films, despite saying that I was not a fan of those films. So after I had said that, and I dug around a little bit, it's like, actually, there's a few found footage films that I really like what they did. And then it got me thinking about, well, yeah, sort of what is it that I like about those. I was very doubtful when we started this journey that I could come up with 10. But as I started going through a list of potentials, I actually have, well, at least 4 also rans. So I have 14 films that didn't even make my top, like 4 films that didn't make my top 10, that some of them were very close. So yeah, now this list is based on, and I'm sure yours is as well, on films that I've seen. And there are definitely a few highly regarded found footage films that I haven't seen. So I don't know if you'd fall into the same category.
Definitely, yeah. So I went for my favorites, not necessarily the ones I think are the best, but the ones that I enjoyed the most. But I did do a little prep for this because I did go and watch Troll Hunter and Taking of Deborah Logan, which I had heard were 2 like highly regarded found footage films. So I wanted to make sure I checked those out to see if they'd make my list. There's a few others that I haven't seen that I think are supposed to be good. But yeah, how about you? Did you do any preparation for this? Or did you feel like there were films you had to go watch?
Well, based on, because I saw that Troll Hunter had come up on quite a few people's lists, I went and watched that one. I'd seen Deborah Logan before. Yeah. It didn't make my top 10.
Spoilers.
But yeah, Troll Hunter, I think, I don't know if it would still make my top 10. I didn't include it. However, it was much better than I expected, based on the title alone.
Yeah, same.
No confusion. It's not part of the Troll series.
No, it's completely different. It's not Troll 2, the found footage version.
It's a completely different film and actually quite good, I thought. So because are you okay if I start with my also rans just so to get them out of the way?
Just to list them off? Or do you want to do them at the end? Because then it might... I'd be curious to see what's going to be on your list.
Okay, sure.
So at the end, why don't you do your also rans?
Sounds good. Sounds good.
I have a theory. I'm going to predict that you and I have a lot of overlap. Because I searched for a list of like every found footage film ever. And it seems like there's some really good ones.
Yeah.
But I feel like in the subgenre of found footage, there's a lot of mediocre,
100%.
Not so good.
Yeah.
Whereas like with conventional films, there's so many good ones, I think. It lends itself to having more diverse lists. So I'm really curious to see, because I feel like it's maybe pretty widely regarded which films in the found footage category are considered to be good.
I think so. I think I was in, when I started digging around at people's top 10 lists, or even like I came across some top 40 found footage. I'm like, okay, whatever. Lots of them I hadn't seen, and partly, and I'll just name franchises like the Paranormal Activity franchise. There are some pretty bad films in that franchise, but there are also some relatively strong films for what they did at the time, right? And I'm sure there's other franchises like that, but I was just really interested. I mean, I said this at the beginning, like I went through a list. I think I had, sort of 17-ish, and I whittled it down to 14, my 10, and then 4 also rans. Some of them, this list would change, kind of like we've talked about our top 10 list. Like I'd probably stand by my top 3, but I'm not even sure that I would. Like I think they could fluctuate up and down the list. And I'll just say that as we get closer to the top, it's less about the film itself and more about my experience with the film.
That's probably true for me as well. Okay. Yeah. And see, I got 9, no problem. And then I kind of struggled to find my 10th.
Oh, interesting.
So there's some found footage films I really like, but apparently not a ton of them. So yeah, it should be interesting.
Yeah. All right. So we're going to flip a coin, magic coin.
Sure.
I don't have a coin.
Rock, paper, scissors.
Do you want me to start off?
Yeah, sure. Go for it.
Okay. Speaking of Paranormal Activity, that is my number 10.
Yeah.
So IMDb 6.3, Rotten Tomatoes 83% critic, 57% audience, which is actually quite interesting to me. So after moving into a suburban home, a couple becomes increasingly disturbed by a nightly demonic presence. So Oren Peli is the director, Kate Featherston, Micah Sloat, and Mark Fredericks. So this was nominee for Best First Feature and Best Horror in the UK in, is it 2010?
For the year it came out, yep.
I really liked conceptually this film. I liked where it took the found footage genre. I thought there were some decent scares. It came at the bottom of my list because it doesn't hold me as well as the others do. I don't find that on rewatch. I think they were smart in the movie to suggest scares as opposed to create them. And I think a lot of the found footage ones that's what they do best. When they suggest and don't try to exceed their budget, I think they succeed.
Meaning they don't show it?
Yes.
Okay.
So I think often when they don't show it, way better than trying
like where the horror happens off screen, but it's implied?
Yeah.
Yeah, I would agree.
So yeah, that ended up as number 10 because I think it has a place in the genre or subgenre, but it doesn't, on subsequent viewings, it doesn't hold up for me. Whereas some of the other ones I go back to time and again.
So because you had those also rans, did it almost not make your list, or did you know I wanted Paranormal Activity?
No, it could have. It was a close call.
Okay.
Yeah.
Interesting. Yeah. That's a good pick. A classic in the found footage subgenre.
Yeah.
All right. So my number 10, and this is one I had to think about a little bit, but this is a 2023 film, which I believe made both of our top 10 lists of 2022. Sorry, 2022. This is Incantation.
Oh.
Yeah, so 6 years ago, Lee Ronan was cursed after breaking a religious taboo, and now she must protect her daughter from the consequences of her actions. This was directed by Kevin Ko and starring Wan Yen Sai. And yeah, this made your top 10, didn't it, of 2022?
It did.
And also made mine. I think the film is very good. It's solid. It's good found footage, but it does something which I won't spoil, but it breaks the fourth wall in a certain way, which for me makes it kind of special. And for me, pushed it over the edge of some of the other ones I was considering.
Okay.
It makes it into the top 10. I was really pleasantly surprised and was pretty impressed with what it does. It takes kind of a clever approach. I think without that element, it maybe wouldn't make the top 10.
Yeah.
But everything it does in terms of found footage, like performance is good. It is scary. I think it's a solid found footage film, but then they do something with it which makes it kind of special. And for me, I think that's what pushed it onto my top 10. I'll be curious to see if that's higher up on your list or if it made the cut.
Yeah.
But it seems like 2022, there was actually quite a few good, quite a few found footage films.
And surprisingly, number 9 is Incantation.
Oh, cool. Okay,
for
there
me,
we go.
For all the same reasons. My only complaint, and it's not really a complaint, I've talked about this many times, I found the runtime was a little long for what it was.
Mm-hmm.
I thought with some judicious editing, I think it could have been an even better film.
That's fair. I did find it a bit long as well.
But yeah, that made my top 10 for sure. And again, a 6.2 IMDb, 75% critic, 58% audience.
Okay.
Which surprises me because I thought there was a lot of good, material in this one. I enjoyed this one. I thought it was good.
Yeah. I didn't actually write down the scores and stuff for mine, but maybe we'll have enough overlap.
Yeah. Hopefully.
We'll get them. All right. So your number 9 was Incantation.
Yeah.
All right. My number 9 is VHS from 2012. When a group of misfits are hired by an unknown third party to burglarize a desolate house and acquire a rare VHS tape, they discover more found footage than they bargained for. So this is an anthology. It's 5 kind of short found footage films in one. And I think kind of notable because Ty West actually directs one of them.
Okay.
Did I recommend this film to you like years ago?
I think you did. And I've watched it several times.
Yeah. To be fair, I've not watched this in quite some time. But there are scenes from it that still stick out for me.
Yeah,
and I remember really liking it at the time. I think all 5 are good. The nature of anthologies is some are always going to be better than others.
Absolutely.
But I don't recall any stinkers. I think they're all solid and 1 or 2 of them are like really good.
Yeah. I for some reason I think it's the first one.
Yes.
Is banger. Like
that's
it's
my favorite.
So good.
Yeah.
And it's some of the subsequent films, I've definitely watched VHS 2. I've watched the
They've gone crazy. I've lost track. Like there's a lot of VHS
and
spin-offs
I've watched
now.
some that are just like, this is horrible.
Yeah.
But this first one is very good. So it actually may or may not show up on my list.
We'll see. Maybe it'll be your number 8. But yeah, VHS 2012. I'd recommend checking that one
out. My number 8 is One Cut of the Dead, 2017.
Oh, cool. Yeah, good pick.
So this is 7.6 on IMDb. Rotten Tomatoes, 100% critic score, 87% audience. Things go badly for a hack director and film crew shooting a low-budget zombie movie in an abandoned World War II Japanese facility when they are attacked by real zombies. I love them.
Now,
oh, yeah.
There's big spoilers in this potentially. Are you going to spoil it?
I don't think so. Well, not. I don't think so. What do you think are? No, I'm
okay.
not. No, all I've got to say about this. So director by Takayuki Hamatsu, and Takayuki Hamatsu is also starring in it along with Yuzuki Akiyama. This was a great film. I remember watching it and was like, this is awesome. I was taken from the first. All I will say about, other than what I've read about the summary, is that the concept of the film is fantastic.
Yes, I agree.
And the execution is great.
Yeah.
It's a real fun watch. Lots of great stuff, lots of great action. Like if you like zombie films and you haven't seen this, why haven't you seen this? You need to go see it. It's definitely there for me.
Yeah, I'd like to chat with you a bit more after the episode because I think there's some big spoilers in this one. If you don't read about it, just go watch it.
Just go watch it for sure.
But that's a nice pick. That's a good one.
Yeah.
I actually didn't consider that one for my list. But
so there you go.
All right. So my number 8 is another one from 2022 and one we actually reviewed earlier this season. This is Deadstream. So a disgraced internet personality attempts to win back his followers by live streaming one night alone in a haunted house. But when he accidentally pisses off a vengeful spirit, his big comeback event becomes a real-time fight for his life. So this is directed by Joseph and Vanessa Winter and also starring Joseph Winter as Sean Ruddy. I'm so shocked that this made my list because the first time I watched it, I actually didn't really like it. But I felt like because we were recording the episode and people were saying good things about it, I went back and watched it again. And then I loved it the second time.
Yeah, sorry, go ahead.
I just think tonally you have to be prepared for what it is. Like it just, for what my expectations were, it was very different the first time I watched it. But the second time I watched it, the comedy came through a lot more and I knew what I was in for. This is kind of like an Evil Dead style, like over the top body horror, but some really funny elements. I found it pretty hilarious. So I really actually ended up really liking Deadstream, even though I didn't love it my first
and it was,
through.
I mean, we've mentioned this in many episodes, but because it straddles that line, the horror genre or horror comedy, I hesitated about watching it. And for me, I hadn't read anything good about it. I just saw it on Netflix and thought, man, I'm going to take a chance and watch this. And I was so taken with it. And I think it was my pick for an episode, maybe. I don't know. Oh, no.
Well, we kind of did the dueling douchebags. So
okay.
If you want to go back and listen to earlier season 3, we do an episode with Deadstream, also looking at Dashcam. But I think we both mentioned in the episode, he's a lovable douchebag and kind of an endearing character.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, that was a good pick. Good pick.
Yeah, thanks.
So my number, where are we? 7.
This will be your 7, yeah.
So my number 7 is Be My Cat, 2015.
Very nice.
IMDb. Now this was one that was completely off my radar until Mike mentioned it. So IMDb 5.8, Rotten Tomatoes, 88% critics, 70% audience. An aspiring filmmaker goes to shocking extremes to convince Hollywood actress Anne Hathaway to star in his film. First entry in Adrian Tofei's trilogy, which includes We Put the World to Sleep and Pure. So directed by Adrian Tofei, cast as Adrian Tofei, Sonia Teodoriou, Florentina Harriton. As I mentioned, totally off my radar, winner and nominee for a lot of awards at international festivals. We did an episode on this one, so go back and check our library. And for me, the reason it made my list was because of Adrian Tofei. He's a believably unsettling character. And if you suspend your disbelief and focus on his performance and his character and his personality, that was very unsettling for me.
I'm so glad that they made your list. That's awesome.
Yeah.
And I do think like a lot of the ones like Paranormal Activity, most people have probably heard of, but I can see Be My Cat being obscure enough. A lot of people don't know about it. Definitely go watch Be My Cat.
Yeah. 100%.
Great pick. All right. So my number 7 is Behind the Mask, The Rise of Leslie Vernon from 2006. So this is the next great psycho horror slasher has given a documentary crew exclusive access to his life as he plans his reign of terror over the sleepy town of Glen Echo. This was directed by Scott Glosserman, starring Nathan Basel as Leslie Vernon, and 2 very nice cameos by Robert Englund and Kane Hodder, who are Freddy and Jason, respectively. Yeah. Now, this is a mockumentary, perhaps more than a found footage. I still think it counts.
I think so, too.
Documentary is still kind of found footage
I think
thing.
so.
And a lot of the found footage films actually are kind of shot as documentaries.
Yes, I agree.
This is just, for the time it came out, I think a super clever and hilarious mockumentary that kind of highlights like the behind the scenes of a slasher as he's like trying to get famous and just talking about all the like the tricks and the difficulties of being a slasher. He's like, oh yeah, it's so hard. Like I got to run to keep up, make it look like I'm not running and still keep up with my victims. It's just a really good tongue-in-cheek satire of slasher films, and I really liked it. I recommended this one to you as well.
You did.
It took a long time for you to watch it.
It did.
And you liked it. We'll see if you liked it enough if it makes your top 10. But this is kind of it's a dark comedy.
Yeah.
It's not slapstick comedy. Like it still does have horror elements. So you could almost watch this and think it was a horror film, but it's kind of a love letter slasher films and all the like kind of cliches and tropes that go into it. And I think it's quite a fun watch. So if you've not seen The Rise of Leslie Vernon, I think it's a good one.
Indeed. And that is my number 6.
Really?
As a matter of fact. I mean, you recommended this to me, and I don't know why. I had some aversion to watching it, and I couldn't tell you why, but I kept thinking, I need to watch this. Because usually when one or the other of us recommends a film, it's been good. Like you've never...
Maybe you didn't trust my sense of film back in the days. I recommended that to you a long time ago. Like 10 years ago, probably.
And maybe it's your affinity for Nicolas Cage that makes me question your judgment. But anyway, took me ages to watch, but the premise was so good. The comedy was really good. I think you've expressed it really well. Like the fact it is a love letter to this style of film and this sort of subgenre of the horror. And if you're, if you know kind of thing, when you watch it, you'll get it. It's so good. And if you're a horror fan and you like slashers, you'll see everything that they do and you'll really appreciate the film. It's well worth a watch.
Now it's interesting. Do you find most of the picks on my list, I've not actually seen for quite a long time. So it's hard for me to kind of conjure up specifics, but I know they made an impact for sure. Like these are cemented in my top 10, I think. But had you seen most of yours recently? Or are you going like, when's the last time you would have watched Leslie Vernon?
Well, it's only been a couple of years because it took me ages.
It took you 7 years to watch it after I recommended it. That's fair.
It's only been a couple of years. So, and again, this is very respectable. IMDb 6.7, which is very high for this kind of film. 76 critic and 75% audience. So the audience got it. And so did the critics. I think that's a recommendation in itself. But for most of these, with the exception of 1 or 2, I've seen them, I'd say within the last couple of years.
Okay, nice.
Yeah. Number 6.
All right. So my number 6 is Creep from 2014. So this is a young videographer answers an online ad for a one-day job in a remote town to record the last message of a dying man. And when he notices the man's odd behavior, he starts to question his intentions. So this was directed by Patrick Bryce, and also starring Patrick Bryce and Mark Duplass. And so I knew Mark Duplass from a show called The League, and it's like this kind of really raunchy comedy about fantasy football. I could care less about fantasy football, but the show is hilarious. And Mark Duplass is like one of the main characters, and he's really funny. So it's kind of interesting watching a horror film with him, but he does a great job. Actually reminds me a little bit of Adrian, from Be My Cat.
Yeah.
Like kind of a likable, kind of funny, but then becomes more socially awkward. And if it gets more uncomfortable as the film goes on. But I really like this one. I think the performances are good. Has a great ending, which I will not spoil. And they made a sequel, Creep 2, which I think is still pretty good and worth watching. Maybe not quite as good as the first one. But I really like Creep. I think mostly for Mark Duplass's character and performance. But yeah, that's my number 6, Creep from 2014.
Very interesting. I actually preferred the second one to the first one.
Oh, cool. Okay.
I liked Creep too.
They're both really good.
Yeah, this one didn't land as well for me as the second one. I don't know why. I don't know if it was the fact that there were two male characters and the second one is male female.
Yeah.
I'm not sure. I can't.
Did you watch them in the order they were released? Did you see Creep first?
I saw Creep
2?
first and then saw the second one second.
Did you like Creep the first time you saw it?
Not as much as you.
Oh, interesting. Okay.
I definitely preferred the second one for whatever reason. Maybe I was used to his character.
Right.
I found his character a bit jolting, I think, and maybe I didn't quite get what he was doing.
Okay.
Whereas you mentioned the sort of comparison with Be My Cat, whereas I found with Be My Cat, his awkwardness seemed not more genuine, but more believable to me that this was like his joking, his laughter was very uncomfortable, even for him. My take on Creep was that his joking and his social awkwardness was what's the word I'm looking for? Was manipulative for him. It wasn't necessarily genuine.
Interesting. Okay.
I
can see that.
That put me off a little bit. I think that's the best way of explaining it. But a good pick though, because I think I think the best films of this genre do something different each time. And that one for sure was something different. Kind of like the Leslie Vernon one, Behind the Mask. It does something different that you don't expect.
So did you have the year for Be My Cat?
2015.
Okay, so Be My Cat came out after Creep. That's interesting because they are kind of similar in what they're doing.
Yeah, they are. So we're into our top 5. Well, that was quick.
Top 5, yeah, we're going through these pretty quick.
So my number 5 is Host 2020. IMDb 6.5, critic score 99%, audience score 71%.
Are you serious? 99? Wow.
I don't know. We've talked about this. I think, did we do an episode on Host?
No.
But
we've referenced it a couple times.
We've referenced it. I think we've both talked about sort of that pandemic kind of horror, whether that's going to hold up. So, I mean, that's the score that I looked up a couple of weeks ago when I was doing my notes for this. 6 friends hire a medium to hold a seance via Zoom during lockdown, but they get far more than they bargained for as things go quickly wrong. So this was directed by Rob Savage, Haley Bishop, Gemma Moore, Emma Louise Webb are the stars of this one. So one of my comments was, I wonder if the high scores are a post-COVID hangover. Will it hold up over time or does it just capture the zeitgeist of the moment? So what I do like, and there's been a few of these, there was Unfriended and Dark Web and a bunch of these ones that they were looking at online
Searching.
stuff. Yeah. So I think if they're done well, they use the medium that they're trying to incorporate into the film. They use it really well. And I feel like this film did it for me. I thought there were some genuinely scary things going on in the film. A very short runtime. I didn't look up what it was, but it was a short.
Just over an hour, maybe?
Yeah, I think 70 minutes, 65 minutes. And this was definitely recommended by Mike Munzer and the Evolution of Horror. I think either a guest or one of his, he did an episode on this one anyway, and I think he might have had the director
Rob Savage on.
Yeah. Anyway, that's my number 5. I haven't seen it since the first time I watched it, so this one has been a little while.
Yeah.
But I remember it having an impact on me. I like this one.
That was an amazing pick at number 5. Because my number 5 is also Host.
Whoa.
Yeah.
Crazy.
2020, directed by Rob Savage. And I will not give you a synopsis because you just heard it. But yeah, I think this film is just obviously notable because it was one of the few films actually produced during the pandemic, during the lockdown. Very clever of him to have the idea of shooting a whole movie over Zoom, which actually worked out really well. And I think of all those like films on a computer screen, this is the best of them.
Yes, I think so too.
I think I've seen them all, are like the notable ones, and I really like this one. And I was reading apparently his idea for the film, he was actually on Zoom with his friends and played a prank on them where he pretended he was being attacked by someone in his attic. And then he liked the idea so much he pitched it to Shudder, and they're like, "Oh yeah, sure, we could do a movie around that." So yeah, very nice, impeccable taste. We both have Host as number 5, 99% critic score though. That's super impressive.
Yeah.
So people should definitely.
Yeah, if you haven't seen that one, that's worth a watch, particularly because it's got a short runtime. So it's not like it's asking a lot of you as a viewer.
Now, it came out during the pandemic, though.
I believe so. What was the year?
2020.
2020, yeah.
So it would be interesting. I think we probably both watched it around the time it came out.
Yeah.
So maybe do you have more of an affinity for it because you're in that, you're actually living the experience?
I wonder.
So I like your question of like, if you watch this 10 years from now, does it hold up? Or is it because, as you say, like the zeitgeist of the moment?
Yeah, I mean, I have to wonder, like, if you didn't experience COVID and lockdown as a sentient being, probably, I don't know, from 10, 12 and older, like if you don't have those solid memories of what was taken away from you, and I'm just speaking for myself, but the genuine fear not having, for me, it was genuine fear about where is this going and what's going to happen. And that was palpable. So I don't know if a young person who didn't feel that because they were buffered by their parents or whatever, if that's going to have the same impact on them.
Well, it's so relatable because all of your social interactions mostly were on Zoom. So we did our like game nights over Zoom and work over Zoom and chatting with friends over Zoom. So you could really relate to the characters. Whereas if you didn't have that experience.
Exactly.
Yeah. Anyways, good pick.
Number four. I have VHS 2012 as my number 4.
I assume that would be on your list somewhere.
5.8 IMDb, only 56% critics and 41% audience. And so this was one of the ones where I thought, should I was questioning myself, but then I thought, no, because my experience with this film was really good. I liked the vignettes. As I mentioned, I really like the first one, and I haven't seen that for a few years now, but I can vividly remember the first segment of this.
It's so good.
And so this one, I just think it needs to be on my top 10, regardless of whatever. And actually there's another one in my top 5 that's kind of falls into that category. It doesn't, because I started looking at the IMDb scores particularly and thinking, well, should I move these around based on the scores? It's like, no, because that's not what I'm basing this on. I'm basing this on subjective experience with each of these films. So that's where I'm at.
And you said you've seen the second one?
I have seen VHS 2, and I've seen whatever the most recent one was, which was terrible.
Like 99 or?
Yeah, I think VHS in 99.
Yeah.
It was awful.
Yeah, I watched the second one and didn't like it very much. No. And I didn't watch like 3, 4, 5 or the other 8 spinoffs they've done for VHS.
No, this one, again, like with many franchises, Paranormal Activity, again, not a fan of found footage films. I've seen quite a few of the Paranormal Activity ones, and the first one's still a standout for me. Like, I think the concept just gets tired really quickly. And I found it with this one too, but the concept to start with, the first one worked for me.
But Creep 2, you like better than Creep 1.
I did. Yeah. It doesn't happen often, but it does happen.
All right. So my number 4 is actually one we referenced a few times in our last episode. And this is What We Do in the Shadows from 2014.
Interesting.
So this is follow the lives of Iago, Taika Waititi, Deacon, Jonathan Brew, and Vladislav Jermaine Clement, 3 flatmates who are just trying to get by and overcome life's obstacles, like being immortal vampires who must feast on human blood. Hundreds of years old, the vampires are finding that beyond sunlight catastrophes, hitting the main artery and not being able to get a sense of their wardrobe without a reflection, modern society has them struggling with the mundane, like paying rent, keeping up with the chore wheel, and trying to get into nightclubs. So just a hilarious fan footage take. And if you know Flight of the Conchords, this is the Flight of the Conchords guys. Just playing with every kind of cliche and idea of being a vampire, but taking a comedic take on it. And just a very accessible, fun film, which if you like vampire movies, or if you like Flight of the Conchords, you will probably enjoy this film. I watched this with my whole family, my sisters, my parents. Everyone loved it. I think it's really accessible. I'm going to predict that this is on your list, but we'll see. And there's been a lot of comedic takes on vampires. We mentioned some last time, like Dracula Dead and Loving It or Vampire in Brooklyn. I think this is maybe the best one, a comedy take on the vampires genre.
Yeah. This was really good. Really good. Yeah.
So there's no horror here. This is definitely all comedy. So don't go in expecting any kind of horror.
Yeah.
And I guess it's more of a mockumentary again, right?
I would agree. Yeah.
But I highly recommend What We Do in the Shadows, 2014.
There you go. Nice pick.
Thanks.
I don't know if you've seen my number 3. I've recommended it to you a few times. It is Afflicted, 2013.
You have recommended this to me, and I have not watched it yet.
Oh, okay. So
this is payback for Leslie Vernon.
So 6.2 on IMDb, 83% critic, 57% audience. And you notice with a lot of these, the critics get, maybe not a lot, with a few of these, the critics get it. The audience doesn't. Now, the one thing I will say though is I believe there are several films with this title. So you have to be, right. It's kind of like Dash Cam, because I watched the wrong Dash Cam and then had to go back and find the one we were actually going to do an episode on. So I believe there are at least 2 that I've seen. This one really took me by surprise. I'd read a couple of good things. It came up on a few lists, and I thought I'll check this out. 2 best friends see their trip of a lifetime take a dark turn when one of them is struck by a mysterious affliction. Now, in a foreign land, they race to uncover the source before it consumes him completely. So Derek Lee and Cliff Prowse are the directors, and Derek Lee and Cliff Prowse are the stars. So I think this film had great pacing, strong performance from the central character. They're both central, but Derek Lee is really the protagonist of the film. I like the twist on the found footage genre, and there's another horror subgenre that I don't want to give away a spoiler. I just think this was really well done. It's from the beginning. There's a tiny little bit of backstory. These 2 friends, they're basically going to vlog their way around the world, and they've got their camera. There's a little bit of their going away party, and then bam, they're on their trip. And from there on, I think just really ramps up, and I really liked the pacing of this film, and I just think they did a really good job.
Nice.
Yeah.
So sorry, you're recommending this film? Is that what you're saying?
I am recommending this film. It's my number 3. It's one that Mike hasn't seen, despite me probably for the same amount of time, 10 years telling you to watch it. 2013. It's now a decade old. I actually didn't see it. I probably been 5 years.
Yeah.
To be fair.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, maybe I'll watch that tonight. All right, so my number 3, which I presume has to be on your list, but we'll see. The film that started it all, The Blair Witch Project from 1999. So in search of a local legend, 3 bold amateur documentarians hike into the Burkittsville gloomy Black Hills forest to find a shadow, the fabled Blair Witch. Now, 1 long year later, after the fateful October of 1994, there's still no sign of the student filmmakers, apart from the raw footage they left behind. So this was directed by Daniel Myrick and Eduardo Sanchez, and starring Heather Donahue, Michael C. Williams, and Josh Leonard. And I believe this is the film that created the found footage subgenre in the horror genre. And I still remember I was in high school, late middle school, and my mom's like, "Oh, like you should go see this." I wasn't a horror fan. My mom's like, "Oh, they found this real footage and they're putting it in the movie theaters." And so I went into this movie like believing that this was an actual film that was found and they were putting in movie theaters, which I should have known was not true. But I think she thought it was true and I thought it was true. And so when I went to go see it in theaters, going in with that lens of thinking this was actual real footage, I think that made it that much more engaging and interesting for me. It'd be interesting to go back and watch this one without, like, it was the first one. So if you never watched it at the time and you went back and watched it years later, I wonder if it holds up.
Yeah.
But for sure, like the end of the movie, there's many iconic moments in this, lots of moments that are parodied, like her crying with like the bit of snot running down her nose or something. It's been parodied a million times. But I remember getting chills in the theater and it was super effective. And I do think it holds up probably. But this was my number 3, The Blair Witch Project.
Good choice. Good choice. Yeah, I'll have to see whether it's on my list or not.
We'll have to see. Your number 2?
My number 2 is Rec from 2007, the original in Spanish, I believe. 7.4 on IMDb. I think that's the highest score on this list. 90% critic, 82% audience. A television reporter and a cameraman follow emergency workers into a dark apartment building and are quickly locked inside with something terrifying. You'll have to forgive my pronunciations. The director is Jome Baguero, Paco Plaza, also co-directed. The cast, Manuela Velasco and Ferran Terrazza. the premise is just great. I mean, we've talked about this a few times, particularly with found footage films. There's always the question of why are they there, or why is the footage being filmed? And I think this film did a really great job of lots of things. But the first thing is the premise. Why are they still filming? Well, there's a reason, because they're reporters and they're in this emergency and they're trying to get the story. That makes a lot of sense to me. The documentary or mockumentary idea of found footage makes sense, because you've got B-roll to get and all this stuff. But this one, I thought the performances were really good. I felt like there was a real feeling of dread and tension, right? For like the heightened emotion in this film is really good to me. And of course, the finale is killer. I remember jumping out of my seat in the final moments. So I would highly recommend this film, and I would recommend, like with any foreign language film, watch it with subtitles. Don't watch it dubbed.
So did you see Quarantine as well?
I did see,
which is almost like a shot-for-shot remake of Rec.
Like with many things, like with The Ring, I just feel like the Spanish version got it better.
And did you watch Rec first before Quarantine?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that has an impact on my perception there, but I still feel like they did it better. And actually, I'm going to make a little plug here for Spanish horror films in general. If you haven't seen some Spanish horror films, seek some out. Terrified is one of them.
It's a good one.
They're just like we've talked about before on the podcast with Asian horror films. There's something about the sensibility of Spanish directors, Spanish writers, something about their perspective, their view on the world. Maybe it's cultural in terms of their ghost stories, the stories that they tell themselves around the campfire. To me, that there's something very scary about Spanish.
Did you see The Platform?
Yes.
Yeah, I kind of like The Platform too.
And I was trying to think, wasn't there like a ghost one that was Spanish as well?
Oh, La Llorona?
No, not La Llorona. That was the Spanish version of that's actually really good too. It's kind of like, sorry, I'm terrible with names. The one with, anyway, I'm going to have to edit that.
Okay. Yeah, I don't remember.
Anyway, that's my number 2.
All right. So my number 2 has already shown up on your list. And this is Paranormal Activity from 2007. I won't give the synopsis or the director or everything, because you've already done that.
Yep.
But I think you said at the beginning, it wasn't, in some cases, the reason that your films are on the list, not necessarily because of the film itself, but because of the experience you had with it. Yeah. And yeah, I think with Blair Witch, like that was one of the seminal films that kind of got me into horror. And so that kind of got me down a path where I was anticipating and enjoyed Paranormal Activity as well, I think is another like important film in the found footage subgenre. I just think every aspect of this film is solid. It's just a good found footage film. The performances are really good. I like the building tension where like things are pretty calm during the daytime and then usually something happens at night. Yeah. And each night it kind of ramps up, it gets more intense and more intense. And so as a viewer, you start almost getting nervous for nighttime. And when you know it's nighttime, you know something bad's going to happen. And it was really fun watching it the first time I watch it with a group of people and just people getting nervous for each night as things ramp up. So I think it's a very effective found footage film, really strong performances. And at the time, I feel like this was before like the floodgates completely opened with a lot of found footage. So they were still kind of special. So I think this was one of the bigger ones after Blair Witch Project that got a lot of mainstream attention.
I think so. Yeah.
Like there was there were some other minor ones, but I feel like the next really big found footage film after Blair Witch might have been Paranormal Activity.
Yeah, because Blair Witch is 99, and this one's 2007.
Yeah.
So I feel like, I mean, if you look at not just the horror genre, but if you look at genres of film, if there's a film that comes out that's fairly popular, like if we look at, for example, the slasher period in the 80s, sort of arguably Halloween kicks that off in 1978. And then you have Friday the 13th coming out a year later, I think. And then you have all these copycats.
Yeah.
And then it kind of dies out because people just they just do terrible versions of the same film. And I think the same thing happened with found footage.
I think especially with found footage.
Yeah.
Because it's almost like magic tricks. Like,
yes,
they can use, like, certain ones would use a new technique that was very effective, and then other ones would just copy it, and you'd get kind of bored and tired of that thing. So I feel like Paranormal Activity kind of invented some new magic tricks. I won't spoil them, but did unique things with the found footage genre that was pretty special and interesting. And then, as you say, got copied a lot.
And I mean, I think found footage became popular because Blair Witch gave people a recipe to say, well, we actually don't need high quality film footage. We don't need steady cams. We don't need gimbals. We don't need, like, it can be shaky. It can be all over the map. And I mean, evidence 2023, 2022, you still have found footage films, Dashcam and Deadstream, that are being produced with the same kinds of shots that were produced, 20 years ago, 20 plus years ago.
Now, I liked Paranormal 2. I don't think I've seen them all. There's quite a few as well. Like, they went a little crazy with the spin-offs.
Yeah, I just recently, a few months back, watched Next of Kin, Paranormal Activity.
Is that the one in Mexico or something?
I don't know. I blocked it out. It was so bad.
I think I watched the first two. I liked the second one. And then I think the third one started to get less good, and I just stopped watching after that. But anyways, number 2, Paranormal Activity. Did you want to add to that?
No.
Okay.
I don't think I will, but I will tell you what my number 1 is.
Drum roll.
Blair Witch.
Oh, okay, nice. I assumed that was going to make your list.
But ironically, this has the lowest scores on the list.
Does it really?
Yeah, 5 on IMDb, 86% critic, but 56% audience. So I won't give you summary and all that kind of stuff. But again, just ironic that it has the lowest IMDb score. I really enjoyed this. I think, again, I think it's a matter of when you see it in your journey.
Did you see it in theaters at the time?
I did not see it in the theaters.
Oh, okay.
I definitely saw it outside of theaters. 99, I would have been living in Port Hardy on the north end of Vancouver Island, and not a lot of stuff came through Port Hardy. So it wasn't until a couple of years later that I actually saw it it would have been on VHS. But yeah, I go back to it every couple of years and watch it, and I think it still has some really creepy moments. I think because I saw it before all the parodies, I will see a scene and go, oh yeah, that's been parodied. I don't find it funny. Like, I don't watch the film and go,
agreed.
Oh, well, I can only see the parody in my head. I just see the breakdown of those relationships and the pressure on those people and how that manifests itself. And I think it's, for me, it holds up. And like I said, partly because of its age and its IMDb score, I was second guessing myself and saying, oh, should Rec be number 1? Because that's a really close
I was going to
second.
ask, was this an easy number 1 for you, or no?
It was not easy.
So I battled with Rec for...
Yeah, I went back and forth a couple times. And even Afflicted, I mean, that's just a really strong, like, I feel strongly about that.
Is it? You think I should watch that?
Yeah, I think you should watch it. Okay. I should have recommended it to you sooner. All right, so your number 1.
My number 1 is 2022's Dashcam. Just kidding.
Liar.
No. My number 1 is Be My Cat, a film for Anne from 2015. I just love this movie.
Yeah, you really like this one.
I do. And I didn't see it until this year when we watched it for an episode for season 3. So again, I won't break down all the rundown, the synopsis, because you already did. But I just think Adrian's performance is so incredible that it makes this film to the point where there are parts in the movie you aren't even sure if this is actually happening. The fact that the real director's name is Adrian, and there's so many meta elements to this. And then I think you and I, we won't spoil it, but you can go back and listen to the episode. Some debate in terms of what is real and what is happening. And it's a film you can watch multiple times on lots of different levels. And he's just incredible. Like, I think I enjoyed Creep, but I think what Adrian does in this movie is just better in almost every way. So yeah, I was kind of surprised.
Wow.
It's
that surprises me that it was so high. I knew that you really liked this when we did the episode. I wouldn't have anticipated this was so high.
Yeah, I was just super impressed with it. And so Paranormal Activity and Blair Witch Project were so important in terms of, I think, making me into a horror fan, and they're, some of the most widely regarded found footage. But Be My Cat, A Film for Anne, I think is a very special film, especially because of those like meta elements. I still would love to know if Anne Hathaway knows that this film exists and if she's watched it. But anyways, yeah, so that's my number one was Be My Cat, Film for Anne.
Well, I have two that we haven't mentioned that are on my list as also rans.
Okay.
So I'll start with the ones that have been mentioned. Deadstream, I think, could have made my top 10. I thought
that was going to be your top 10. Yeah.
It was very close, and it probably would have kicked out Paranormal Activity or something like that. Creep 2 was also my also rans because that was a strong showing for me. As Above, So Below, 2014.
I have seen that one.
That one had some good moments for me, and probably. This came out 7 years before Blair Witch, Ghost Watch, which is a British, and I would suggest to you, this one I think has come up on Evolution of Horror a few times. I believe, and don't hold me to this, I believe this was a made-for-TV British film. I think it still holds up. It's dated. And you will see elements that you go, but you could say that about a lot of found footage films that do something in the moment that's of the time. And then when you go back and you think, I mean, like Blair Witch, camcorders. I mean, other than a garage sale, where have you ever seen a camcorder before?
It's true.
Anyway, Ghost Watch, 1992, British film. It's a much different take on the found footage, but it's got lots of found footage elements, and I think it's worth a watch.
Nice. Yeah. So we had 7 films that were in common. So we each had 3 separate ones. Yeah. I thought What We Do in the Shadows would make your list.
I think it's the comedy elements that I just limited myself to what I considered like scary horror films.
Oh, okay. Because I actually had a lot of comedies on mine.
Yeah, and it's funny because I think that's why Deadstream didn't make it as well. And I just, for whatever reason, I censored myself and thought, no, this has to be legit horror. And again, I mean, I would be interested to know, for our listeners, whether you agree with our found footage list. If there's something you think, how could they possibly have missed this film on both of their lists? And don't forget, you can drop us a line at dudesofthedead, all one word, @gmail.com. Let us know what you thought of the list, whether or not you thought there was something that neither one of us has mentioned that you think, have you seen this film? Why haven't you seen this film? And also, just a little plug for season 4, which will be starting in a little while, that you could drop us a line there. Even if it is a found footage film, you could say, well, maybe you should review this for the next season, because that's the idea behind season 4, is that we'll take listener requests and then do a review. And we have a bunch of guests lined up.
Yeah, a lot of special guests to come on. So we figured have some listener requests, but then if they're in town, then why not have them actually come on and talk about it on the show? So
there you go.
Yeah. Well, thanks for listening. Thanks for listening to season 3.
Season 3, that's it. It's a wrap. It's in the bag. It's in the can. It's somewhere.
And we'll see you in season 4, and we'll see you in the aisles.